welcome to the first episode of Dr. Griggs. Today we're going to be working on a Yamaha HTR-5540. It is a 5.1 surround sound receiver, and its issue is if you look on the back, as any receiver that you may be dealing with, you will notice that it has several ports on it. We've got digital DTS inputs and outputs. We've got regular RCA. We've got our speaker outputs, our power, and our auxiliary power. If we wanted to have a tape deck or a CD player that came on with the power with this when we turned it on, that's where we plugged this into. So here is the issue with this receiver. When these are made, and I'm an avid Yamaha guy, if it's got a Yamaha name on it, I probably own it. The boards, when these boards are manufactured at Yamaha or anywhere else for that matter, nothing is individually soldered onto the board. What happens is the board goes into a machine and a computer lays out all the devices that need to be on the boards, whether it's transistors, resistors, capacitors, whatever. And the bigger stuff is soldered, but most of the smaller stuff just goes into another machine that heats up the board and applies the solder. And everything is soldered at one time onto the board. This receiver has been with me for many years, and it has gone through a lot of abuse, unplugging, plugging, moving around. I've used it for setups. We've set up temporary little movie theater sessions for it, for movies that came out and whatnot. And what has happened is the subwoofer output, which is right here, has worn out. Yes. The RCA jack itself has become unsoldered from the board, and there's a break, and it's causing the subwoofer to have a buzz in it. And you can reach back here and jiggle the cord, and it'll cause it to stop buzzing, and the subwoofer will go back to normal operation. So what we're going to do today is we're going to reattach this RCA socket that is the subwoofer output so that we get rid of that buzz from the subwoofer and repair the receiver. The first thing that you are going to want to do is you are going to want to take the screws for the top cover off the receiver. Now this particular receiver has 4 screws in the back, here, 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 and here. And then after you remove those screws, there is 4 screws, 2 on either side. And then you simply grab it from the sides, slide it back, and lift it up. You may have to kind of grab the sides of the bottom and just barely pull them out just a little bit so that they don't catch anything. I've already taken the liberty, obviously, of removing the screws. Now, let's go over some of the components in here so that you're aware of what's in here, what to touch, what not to touch, especially if you have to perform ever some kind of open surgery with it plugged in to diagnose something, which we don't have to do here, which if you ever have to do, please be very mindful. There is 120 volts in this, and it can't. All right, so here's the top view of our Yamaha receiver. Now, if you have a receiver that turns off in the middle of playing, or a surge happens in your house, or something causes an electrical charge and your receiver will not turn on, the screen will not come on, the lights will not come on, anything, the first thing you want to check is you want to understand the components. This is your power cord that comes in from your wall outlet. This is your main transformer for all of your power to the receiver. But if you look right there, I'll touch it with the screwdriver. Right here, you will see a fuse. Now this fuse is the main inlet fuse from the power cord. And you also see a smaller transformer that handles the lower voltage end of the inside of the receiver for like the display panel, the buttons, the electronics that control the bigger components, which are powered by the larger transformer. And this transformer is also the transformer that handles the power sent to the speakers. But if your receiver will not turn on, the first thing you want to check is this fuse right here. It's in different locations in different receivers, but it will always be on the main power board. You never want to touch the main transformer circuitry if it's plugged in. There is 120 volts running through these 2 circuits, and it outputs varies different between different manufacturers, different receivers, different watts, whatever the receiver needs, whatever the electronics are rated for. Please be cautious that all of this is high voltage. It is the exact same voltage that's coming from your wall. So make sure that everything is unplugged. The receiver is alone by itself. the cord is on the ground before you ever start to go to mess with these components. And to get this fuse out, you just simply pop one end of it up and the other one comes out. Other components worth mentioning here is our heat sink for our transistors that are in a row down there for the different channels inside the receiver. We have two big capacitors. These two capacitors mainly run off the front two speakers because all of the other channels that output of this receiver will not do low frequency. You have two choices on this receiver. You can either send low frequency to the subwoofer, or you can send it to your mains, or you can send it to both. You cannot send it to any other channel. Here's our inputs and outputs for our RCA selections right here. These are the different components that we can plug up to it. These are specific to audio. These yellow ones are specific to video. As you can see right here, we have a 6-channel input, a CD, a tape deck, an aux, a VCR, a TV box, a DVD, and of course we have a monitor out, and here's our subwoofer that we're messing with. So what we want to do first, since we know where we're working on and we know that it's the bottom RCA, this bottom RCA, I can tell, I don't know if you can see it from here, but it is directly soldered to this board. So what we're going to actually have to do is remove this board right here. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and get set up, and I'll bring you back when we're ready to do that. Okay, so I've got us prepped for this now, and we're looking at this at an angle. These are going to come out different on different receivers. You have to look at it and you have to see how it's put together so that you can understand how to properly remove it. I can see on this particular receiver that this board of RCA jacks is connected to a bigger main board. This is the actual input select board and output select board, and it's connected via this strip right here. Okay, now this is just a board and extender. It's got the same plug up here than it does down here. It's just, this is how it plugs in. There's nothing connected at the bottom on this other board down here. So what it allows us to do is just remove this single board without having to dismantle the whole receiver, which is, it works out good for our purposes. So how you would go about this is, if you look here, there's a series of screws. Okay, you take these 4 screws out that just hold this one piece. Now, when you're taking your screwdriver and you're pushing on these screws to remove this input circuit board and output circuit board for the RCA, you want to make sure that you put a nice, just push right here, because you don't want to be pushing the circuits in, because you don't want to put any pressure on any of the pins or any of the components inside of the receiver. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to gently pull on the 2 ends of this board that comes across here. Okay. And there we go. We pulled it down and popped it out. And here is our component right here. And you can see this extender, and it actually comes off of both pieces. It's got a little clip right here. So we're going to want to lift right here, just a little, and get it to release. And there we go. So there's our extender board. All this does is make this connect into the main board. It does nothing else. Okay? All right, well, let's take a look at this and see if we can find where the solder is broken. Okay. So I want to talk about our board a little bit now that we have it out and we can actually see the issue. I want to talk about a little bit about diagnosing this receiver. So this receiver, again, I've had for a very long time. It's been an extremely reliable, durable receiver. It's been moved around a lot of parties, a lot of good times in my younger days. And so I wasn't surprised when something started wearing out on the jacks. And of course, if you're going to be blasting at a party or having a good movie going, you're going to have something plugged into the subwoofer, which is this connector right here. Now, while the receiver is plugged in, one day, the subwoofer started to buzz. When the subwoofer started to buzz, I instinctively went and checked the cable. I started with the subwoofer, and it made no difference. I plugged in another subwoofer, and it made no difference. And then I started back tracing it until I got to here where the connection plugs into the back of receiver. And when I jiggled it, of course, the buzzing went away. Now, of course, that we have this out, we can actually see that if I push right here, it's not really clear. Let me see if I can get the camera to focus on it. You can see that this leg right here, the solder is loose. Also this one right here. Actually, I believe all three of them are. And the connector itself is wiggly. It's loose from the board, and it's not making a good connection. As soon as I grabbed this cable and jiggled it, and the subwoofer started acting appropriately, I knew that it was because this RCA jack is loose. So that is how you diagnose this. All right, so let's go ahead and set up to repair this. Okay, so what you'd want to do here is you can take and resolder all of these. You can just heat up the solder that's here. You can add solder. You can put flux on it. You can go to the extent that you would like. The correct way would be to maybe dab a little bit of flux on it and then heat it up and add just a little bit, a tiny bit of solder. But I want to see something. So for this purposes, what I'm going to do is do nothing other than just heat up the solder that's there. I'm going to push the terminal down. And this all makes perfect sense now, by the way, the reason that the subwoofer was buzzing, because this pin is the ground for the body of the receiver. This pin, which is still good, is the positive that's inside. And this pin is this outside negative that you see here. And the way that the subwoofer was buzzing, it sounded like a ground issue to me. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead, heat up the solder real good. And then get back here on this one. There we go. Okay, now we've got all three terminals nice and soldered. It's nice and tight, no issues. So now we're going to reinstall it again. Okay, so here we go reinstalling it. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have the orientation of this correct. Okay, now that we know that we have the orientation of this correct, we're just going to push this back on. Try to always do these perfectly straight, just don't come at them from an angle or anything like that. You always want to come out and go in straight. That way you don't bend the pins. And we're going to set this up in here. And we're going to just push up. And there you go. You don't have to push hard. You just push enough to get it to clip into place. And now we're going to set, oops, sorry camera. Now we're going to set our screws in place and go ahead and just tighten them down without dropping them. And again, put your hand on the back side of it so that you're not pushing on any of the terminals or connections. And just put the other two screws in, and then we'll get to where we're doing. See, I had to actually reach down in here and grab the back of this and hold the back of it because I didn't want it to move separate and mess up the solder again. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to put these other two screws in there. I'm going to blow it out real quick just to get any loose debris or any dust that's in it, and then we'll put back on the cover. So we've got everything back together. I've cleaned it out. Our connection's good. Everything else is good. So now what we're going to do is put back on our cover. So we just take our cover, and you can note the back by the screw holes. And again, we just kind of spread it just a little bit and gently set it down. Make sure that it scoots up into place. Put the 8 screws in, 4 in the back, 2 on each side, and you are ready for listening. And if you have any other questions about receivers, feel free to comment, and I'll make videos on them as I find necessary of the equipment that's damaged, or I'll just answer your question. So thank you for watching, Dr. Griggs. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe. I know that we've got a lot of cool stuff coming up with motorcycles and speakers, some custom car work and some custom computer stuff. A bunch of stuff coming up. So please subscribe and check it all out, man. It's gonna be fun, and hopefully with like this Yamaha receiver bit, hopefully it helped you out diagnose something of your own, or it just helped you come up with an idea, or if at minimum, if you have that receiver and you have the same problem, now you know how to fix it. I'm sorry about the sound. We're gonna get it straightened out here soon, and see you next episode. Wonder what it's gonna be next.